All right, so I think I decided what I'm gonna do with this wall over here. I mentioned before in a previous video about doing clamp storage and whatnot, but I really can't decide as far as making racks and stuff to screw onto the wall here and hang, so layout wise. So what I'm actually gonna do, I decided, is I'm gonna make a French cleat wall here in between these two spots, going floor to ceiling. So I'll have flexibility to kind of move things around over time and see where I like them, make different racks and stuff for clamps and other things, maybe a charging station, glue stuff, whatnot. So what I'm gonna use, and I know it's kind of overkill in this situation, I have a few sheets of 3/4 plywood, which I'm gonna use for the backing of the wall right there. And the reason I'm doing that is some of the racks I'm gonna have on there in the French cleats are gonna have quite a bit of weight on them. So if you do 10, 20, 30, or even more of those big pipe clamps, they tend to get pretty weighty. So 50, 60 pounds on a rack maybe. Depending on how I set everything up. So I'm gonna get the plywood set up, we're gonna cut them to width in there, and we're gonna start putting those on the walls, and then we'll make the cleat system, and then we'll start making different hangers to go on there for clamps and different things. So we'll get to that, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, got the first piece cut in here and fit in here. The wall was a little bit crooked, so I needed to take a little bit off that bottom corner down there to get it to fit in there. I've already gone through and found all the studs in here, marked on the floors, and then took a laser and marked all the locations I'm gonna drive screws in here to go through the drywall into the studs, and then I'll just continue up when I add the next piece up there. So I gotta go through and pre-drill all these holes and countersink them so everything's flush. And I'll get to that, and then we'll get the next sheet up there and we'll get moving on it. All right, for this next sheet that's gonna go up there, this would be better if I had a friend around to help me get it up there, but it's raining outside, plus I got friends out of town, and I'm not gonna drag somebody across town in the rain to come help me lift this up here. So what I do, situation like this where I have two stick outs right here on each side, you can see I have a clamp on each one up there, and they're set back from the wall here a little over 3/4 inch, so I can slide the piece in there, rest it on the bottom piece, and the top can't fall out. Then I'll be able to get a screw in there to at least hold it in place while I do all the screw locations and whatnot. So I'm a little winded from moving all this in here, so, but let's get it up there. All right, I might need to trim this piece of hair because I can tell I got a gap down here and it's tight up there. Of course, nothing's ever square. So I'm gonna pop this back out of here, shave a little off that end up there, and then get it back up in there. All right, so we got the 3/4 inch plywood up here, 3 sections, just a small one at the top. The 2 big ones were the biggest pain. And definitely learned that these two, kind of where the old walls were, are definitely not square to each other. So I have a little bit of a gap on one side over there. I'll probably run 2 small strips of trim up the sides to kind of cover those up and make it look a little bit more finished. I did just a few minutes ago do a very light sanding across the whole wall just to knock down some of the burrs from all the screw holes, all that stuff, and get rid of some of the dirt on there. I'll probably hit it all up, wipe down the whole thing with a light coat of Danish oil just to kind of seal it a little bit, prevent it from getting stained, all that stuff. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start cutting down some strips. It'll be the actual cleats that'll go on the walls, and then some remainders that will be used for some of the shelves and hangers that'll go on this wall. So what I'll get set up over on the table saw here, we're gonna take probably, I'm thinking probably about 5-inch sections of 3/4 ply, and then those sections will get split in half on a 45-degree angle to create matching French cleat, the little 45s that go on there. I'm not sure what they're, I guess you can call them cleats. But we'll get set up for that. We'll start cutting those, and then we'll start actual hanging some of those cleats on the walls, and then making some storage systems. All right, so I got all those rails and cleats cut down. A couple of them I already pre-drilled and countersunk the holes. I'm just doing 2 for now, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and start all the screws in these 2 right here. One of them I'm gonna attach in the middle on the wall where I want it to start in the middle. And then I'm gonna use the laser to get that nice and level on there, and then affix that one on there. And then I'm just gonna go, I think I'm doing 6 or 7 inches. I'll have to look at my paper again, spacing in between all of them. But I'm gonna use the middle one that I align with the laser as a reference point, and then just keep going from there, so I know I have everything nice and level. So I'm gonna start all these screws real quick, and then we'll start hanging these.
Come along with me. I'll show you. Ready? Go!
All right, so got the wall done, and as you'll kind of see here, sorry, I'm messing with a new gimbal that I got for this camera, so I can kind of hold it and get a little bit more stable shots. Went almost, with all the cleats, went almost down to the floor, but I left a bit of space down there because I don't know what all I'm going to be hanging there yet, or if I need cleats down that far. So, but you can kind of see here, I think I did about a 7 or 8 inch spacing in between them, and pretty much went all the way up to the ceiling there. Did a quick light coat of Danish oil, just natural, over the top of everything. Once got it all over there, and that's really just to prevent staining and stuff from stuff rubbing up against it and whatnot. The first actual hanger I'm going to make for this system right here is going to be for some of my shorter pipe clamps, and then I'm going to make another one up high for the longer one, since I can reach higher to hang those. So I've already got this from a piece of the cleat cut right here. I think it's 38 inches because that's how wide I'm going to make the first set for a bunch of shorter pipe clamps. So I know the width right now. I need to figure out how deep, because I want to put 2 to each slot. So I think that'll give me probably about 20 or 24 pipe clamps that I'll be able to hang off that one. So I'm going to get to cutting some pieces here, and we'll get to joining it up and start making hangers for this. now from the holes I just drilled there, I'm just gonna draw lines down here, and I'm actually just gonna cut these sections out on the table saw because I've got about 3 8 inches height on the blade right there. I'm gonna use a backing piece of wood there to prevent the tear out and stuff. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now you're probably thinking I'm not leaving a lot of space on the back side there as far as back here, but it's fine because where it's going to be connected to the piece behind it, and it's going to have biscuits in there supporting that, and then supports up since it'll be too deep. Shouldn't have to worry too much about the flex in it. All right, now that I got the top piece cut and the back piece here that the actual, the cleat's gonna go on to hang. So how I'm gonna join these, I'm actually gonna use my domino joiner here, but I also have the Seneca woodworking plate on here for 1/2 inch and 3/4 plywood, since I'm working in 1/2 inch for this thing, and then, I'm sorry, 3/4 inch ply for this holder, and then probably 1/2 inch ply for other ones. These are really great to use for this because you don't have to mess with the fence setup. They're already calibrated for the correct thickness, because sheet goods, plywood is always undersized. So 3/4 it's like a 1/16 of an inch under, yada, yada, yada. Same thing with 1/2 inch and so on. So, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm putting, I marked off on both of these to match up the spots where I'm actually putting the dominoes in, and it's gonna be a glue up assembly. And then I'm gonna make some braces to hold it also. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all these put in here real quick, and then we'll get it put together and see where we're at. All right, I got all my pieces cut for this clamp rack right here. So what I did off camera right here, so I've got a bunch of these 45s that are gonna be the braces, and I actually, with the domino, I marked everything up, marked all the lines, locations on all the pieces, so I could match up the locations of all the mortises for these. So the question now is, I'm gonna go ahead and start putting all these dominoes in here and gluing everything up and see if everything lines up. So I feel pretty confident on this. I really, usually I would just use screws on this, and probably the rest of the clamps I will, but I wanted to try it out, that domino plate for the domino from Seneca Woodworking. And to be honest, actually, after using it on 3/4 inch plywood, I'm a huge fan of it because it makes it completely unadjustable, so you can't lose your actual locations, and it's perfectly centered. It's, when you're making a whole bunch of cuts like that, it's a lifesaver. But I'm gonna go ahead and start gluing these in, and we'll see if my measurements are right. for the next style of clamp that I'm putting on the French cleat wall there is gonna be a type of rack to hold clamps similar to these, a standard bar clamp of various lengths. So in my last place I was working out of, I kind of found that I like to hang them on stuff that they could, in between the bars here, kind of clamp down on without having to adjust these right here and hang them like that so they wouldn't fall off. So what I'm gonna do is, I could have got away with, for the stick outs here, some 1/2 inch plywood or even 1/4 inch, but I have a whole bunch of 3/4 lying around. So what I'm gonna do is, the French cleat's gonna be back here, it's gonna hang on the wall, it's gonna have these two sections. These will all be glued together right here. So when the actual clamp goes on there and hangs on the rack, you can just kind of, if I actually had my other hand free, you can kind of see how it, on the edges there, and kind of has space on the inside here for the feet. And you don't run into issues with them falling off or anything like that. So I'm gonna get this glued up. We're gonna start attaching the back and the cleat, and we'll get back to making more clamps. All right, so I got all my pieces here. I actually did up parts for another small set of clamps that I'm gonna do same way as this big one that I was talking about before, and same way as it's gonna be a system like this, where this this is gonna be the back plate that the actual cleat's gonna be on the back of right here, and it's gonna stick out like this. So since it does have quite a bit sticking off, and there's just a sheet of, well, a piece of 3/4 ply there, I did make some angle brackets that are gonna support it here in the middle and on the ends for the really long ones. So I'm gonna get drilling all the holes with the countersinks to screw these in, and then glue them, and then we'll get the angle pieces fitted to support them. So we'll get that done. And the last thing, I'm just gonna make a little kind of brace to go in here in the middle, because these are gonna have this style clamp on here, which you put 5 or 6 or 8 of them on there. It gets kind of weighty. I want it kind of sagging over time. So I had a bunch of these 45s cut out, because I use them since I'm making a bunch of these clamps stuff. But since this is an odd shape right here, I went over there and measured it, cut it on the bandsaw real quick. So sliding in under here, actually it's a pretty snug fit too. I'm just gonna glue that in there so that there, it'll give us some support this way with all that clamp weight bearing down on it. So glue that up real quick, and then attach a cleat, and then this one's just gonna be good to go. Then I'll do the big one. All right, we're gonna set this aside to dry. I'm gonna go ahead and glue and screw up the big one. We'll get that one set up, and then this one should be dry enough to go ahead and attach the cleat, and we'll start hanging some clamps and see where we're at on the cleat wall. All right, so these are dried up. I'm gonna go ahead and I got the cleats actually cut already for these two racks. I'm gonna go ahead and clamp them on here, get them screwed on, and then I'm probably gonna give everything a quick, well, test fit up on the rack, and then give them a quick coat of Danish oil, and then we'll see how everything looks with them up there. All right, so I'm just wrapping up this project as far as the wall goes, but I still have a bunch more racks to make. So you can see here's a few that I have kind of done up here. So just real quick, you guys saw me on camera, I'm making this one right here. The assembly was done with dominoes. The top one up there, and then I think This one right here were assembled the same way as this one down here. I just use screws and glue rather than doing the domino stuff, so it still works just as good. These over here were the ones that I did with just glues and screws, and you can kind of see how those work right there. So let's see here. Mess with the camera here. So this rack right here has a lot of storage for these bar clamps. I still have room for a few more on here. I'm sure I have some laying around I can throw on here. I got to figure out layout wise here because I still have a few more racks to do specifically for the trigger. I forgot what those type of bar clamps are made, the little grippy ones. And a bunch of longer clamps that'll probably go from the top up there down and then figure out. So I'm imagining those two right there and this long one will probably go along the bottom there, that lower rail right there, and hang down there since they're easy to reach. And then I'll probably make some more clamps for more racks for in this area for other clamps that I need to hang up there. But I have to leave a long section over there for the really, really long parallel clamps and whatnot. So, but you can kind of see how it's turned out so far. I like it so far, and it's gonna give me I might add some more tracks at the bottom there, but it's gonna give me a lot of good clamp storage on this wall instead of having stuff hanging all over the place since it's gonna be unused. But I might post some more as I come up with some more clamps, but really your imagination is endless. You can really, whatever you decide is put a cleat on it, it'll hang on there. And until next time, catch you later.